Alright, let's go ahead and tackle some gloves and vambraces now. So, okay, let's have a little bit of a chat first about what we're going to do with the gloves. We'll bring in some references. Oh, hang on. It's changed again. Yes, I've gone ahead and I found some more references, this time not pertaining to the gloves particularly, but pertaining to the vambraces, because at this point in time our concept art doesn't really carry A, how it's kind of stitched together, so we need a clearer picture on that. B, any kind of patterns and designs on it, so again we're just kind of exploring and taking inspiration from that. And if I just enlarge this a little bit, you'll be able to see what I've found here. So I've found basically the general structure I had pictured to basically make up the tying system on the inside. So we've been kind of digging out that trench in the vambrace there just to make way for something like this. Okay, so that's the idea behind all that. But an interesting thing I found as well is that actually some vambraces are just simply done like this. It's just simply a button with some straps kind of tied over, which I'm not going to lie is actually quite appealing. Okay, and there's also this here. Okay, so maybe we don't need the straps, sorry, this kind of string per se of the laces. We just simply have the straps kind of being the fastening points, which could also be quite aesthetically pleasing. And I thought, well, you know, if we want to add a bit of layering to our vambraces there, we could have this kind of very simple kind of plate kind of attached onto there. And this here, it's a sock, an arm sock. Now that's not what I'm suggesting we do, but it's kind of the aesthetic I'm going for, with the glove being not fingerless like it is here, but essentially what I kind of wanted to do when it meets the shirt. So that's what her gloves should kind of look like and give the impression of, essentially. Okay, because I do very much like how this character here, he's got the leather vambraces there and kind of on top of his, you know, black leather gloves, so to speak. So that's quite a nice thing I quite like there. And if you're going to go with the straps idea, I'm not going to do this one personally, but perhaps in an alternate universe and reality, I might have gone with this kind of design there. Okay, so what we're going to do first is let's focus on the glove, the hand part per se. We'll start sculpting in those folds. It gives us a bit of time to ruminate on just exactly what we want for the vambraces. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and we'll kind of shrink that down. I'll put it over here, and I'm going to focus particularly just on the top part of the glove for now. We're just going to focus on the one hand, because as you've seen before, we can simply copy that over, no fuss. Okay, we'll solo that out to give us a bit of a clearer picture. And what should we start with first? Well, actually, I think I'm going to start with the rather unorthodox approach of the standard brush. Okay, so low intensity standard brush. We'll check our geometry, into which case we have absolutely nothing there, so we do need to subdivide that a little bit, and you can see it is subdividing everything else we've got there. So let's just undo that, because this is all one subtool now. Now you could actually separate these again. I think I might elect to do that, given the fact that I'm still a little bit undecided on what to do with the vambraces. They're still all different polygroups, so I can just come down to split and do a group split, and then just basically tells that brush that's okay. No worries, so we've got the glove portion by itself. Okay, that's fine. So with this pretty much selected, we can now go ahead and do the geometry, and we'll subdivide that a little bit just to give us a bit more kind of resolution. So I'm going to start by kind of penciling in a, that's also very strong, a very kind of line just going across the knuckles there, and then using the inverse just to kind of exaggerate that there's some kind of I guess formation or crease that goes around the very top line of the knuckles there, and it can kind of sort of bend over and wane a little bit as it gets towards the pinky finger there. Okay, so just paying attention to the kind of reference you got there. You got a fold that's going around this particular index finger. Now of course you don't have to follow the reference completely per se. You can use it just as a guidance, and that's perfectly fine as well. For me, I'm just going to try and take some ideas from it there and just basically start kind of penciling it in. So what I want to do more importantly is just kind of again interrupt the smoothness of any particular edge. So you can see there, compared to this edge which is quite smooth, just by taking the standard brush across it a few times, I've kind of upset that kind of curvature, and that's basically the key to creating sort of believable, I say, wrinkles in leather working. Okay, is that the leather working are not kind of fabric folds like you see in a shirt like that. They're kind of just more kind of loose bits of fabric, really loose bits of leather that kind of get crumpled together. And I understand obviously that's what the folds on the clothes are as well, but with leather, so to speak, you don't really have to go in and start sculpting particular folds per se. You just need to basically create these kind of indentations more or less. Okay. Now, having said that, however, if it's thin leather, you're going to get the same idea as clothes and fabric. So, for example, on the ends of the fingers here, you can see that there's a lot of lines kind of stretching down there. You can just go ahead and do the same thing by putting in the alternate version of a standard brush there. Okay. And that's perfectly fine as well. And you can see what I've just done there. It's just kind of made like this kind of loose, floppy part of the leather glove, and sometimes like in the middle finger there, it can kind of cross across the finger itself. Okay, but more or less it's going to be quite kind of sucked in down to the actual finger, because this is the thinnest part of the glove, if you'd like to think of it that way. Okay, the fabric or the leather, I keep calling it fabric, but the leather is thinnest here and thickest mostly around the outside. Okay, so it's going to be quite tight as it goes over the very kind of top edges of your fingers, and you can just sort of use the standard brush and just kind of paint that in a little bit. Stick quite close. Oops, I don't know what quite happened there. Stick quite close to the edges rather than in the center, just so you can get that kind of feel for it there. Okay, and you should start to see basically like the bony sections of your finger start to protrude there. Well, not your finger, but the character's finger. Okay, and then of course we've got some kind of creases going across here as well, where the knuckles will sort of come into contact with one another and actually start meeting the fingers. Okay, so just a few in there. That's perfectly fine, just something like that. Again, don't get too hung up on any of the finer details at the moment. We're just going in and basically penciling in some ideas as to where we might like the strokes to be. Okay, so just keep swapping inverse of the standard brush and the normal function of the standard brush, just to start to get a feel for where the folds would sit. Okay, so if it's tight around the top kind of edges of your fingers, it's going to be slack everywhere else, so you can start to make the other edges sort of gaunt, and what you actually start to see forming there is this kind of seam line edge there, quite naturally. Okay, and if you want, you can use the inflate brush for this process as well. That works just as well, probably better in some cases. Okay, so this one here, I'm going to do a few crossing like that, just to give it a bit of variation. You see, very, very light. I'm not creating any kind of major folds. I'm just creating very light, suggestive folds, essentially. Okay, I know I've used that term a lot, but it is quite true. You don't want to overkill it, generally speaking. Okay, just a few more. I might do something like that and bring that down there. Okay. Okay, right. So you've got a few little wrinkles in there for now. I'll just smooth that out a little bit to create a bit of consistency. Now, here comes the kind of fun part. We're going to take our trim dynamic brush and essentially anywhere that we want flat, like for example, I want the very tips of the fingers here flat. So I'm just going to use a trim dynamic brush. I'm just going to trim that down, almost like I'm making a fingernail, and then I'm going to smooth it. You see that kind of effect there? Now, it is going to ruin perhaps some of the folds you've already got there, but it is a good way of sort of just kind of making sure you haven't got too many wrinkly folds there, because again, it's leather, but depending upon the thickness of said leather, it will have different levels of kind of folds and creases. Okay, so my leather is going to be, well, as you see there, it's going to be quite thick leather. It's not going to be very loose and floppy leather, so I'm going to have quite a rigid look to it, so to speak. Okay, just smooth it out a little bit. And you can see start of that effect starting to take forward ever so slightly. Now, the thing that really sells the leather gloves is we're going to jump over to our damn standard brush, and this might get a little bit tricky, but we're basically going to paint in those edges now. Okay, so we're going to have to jump up another subdivision level and just be brave, pick where you're going to start these lines, and basically just like I've just done there, start maybe even smaller. Just start drawing a line in where the kind of stitching seams actually fall. Okay, and this you're going to see is really going to transform your gloves into really, really believable leather gloves. Okay, this is the kind of part, it's the pièce de la résistance, you know? Very, very cool. And it's going, you see there already on that index finger, it's changed the whole aesthetic appearance of the glove, which is a lovely, fantastic way of doing it. But it's amazing really how much just this small little touch can completely change the aesthetic of, well, a piece of clothing. Okay, and on the other side as well, don't forget. Now, of course, you don't want to be, you know, straight line like that. That looks very unrealistic. Back in ye olden days, when ye olden gloves were made, it's going to be a bit wibbly wobbly. Okay, we didn't have machines to do all this. It was all kind of hand done. So feel free to add in a bit of human error there in the way of kind of a bit of a wavy straight line. And I realize that wavy straight line is a bit of an oxymoronic term, but I think you know what I mean, right? We'll endeavour to create as straight a line as possible with human error taken into account. Okay, so just try your best to stay away from, you see there, sometimes it can lose it, that's fine, just go back over again. Okay, so just try your best to stay anywhere too close in the middle. Just try and very much keep it to the edges, but check you're not too low. So for that, I'm going a little bit lower than I would like. So I'm just going to try a different angle, and this time just keep my pen all the way down, and that's a better angle there. It's a better trajectory. That's much better. So I kind of want it to, as I go around the front, just kind of dig in under where your nails would be, essentially. Okay, so it's going to favor the upper half of the glove more than it is the lower half of the glove, if that makes sense. Okay, now that's just my gloves. Your gloves could just be smack dab in the middle. That's perfectly fine. Okay, but I want to kind of keep my line pretty high up. Okay, oops. Okay, just sort of check. So you can see what's happening here is I've kind of gone off course a little bit. Okay, I've kind of stayed away a little bit from the top too much, so I'm going to have to course correct that. I'm going to bring it back a bit. I'm going to have to come up a bit higher. Okay, now I can start to sort of see it up top. So it is quite important where you place that line. Okay, we do want it to sort of come up top a little bit more than it does sit around the bottom. Okay, and then fold it there, and then jump back round. So just bear in mind you have enough subdivision levels for this, enough resolution, so you can get a nice clean line. You don't want a really pixelated line at the moment, because you don't want to really go for this more than you know, kind of retrace the lines more than you would really need to. So save yourself the hassle. Make sure you've got enough polygonal resolution, I guess. Okay, to do that effectively. Okay. So naturally, at some point, you are going to end up where you're not going to be able to see the seam at all times. Like here, for example, it's going to be a bit difficult to see the seam. But for the most part, you should be able to see the seam. At least that's the style and aesthetic I'm going for personally. Again, feel free for yourselves to go a bit more as a halfway house, but for me, I like to keep the seam higher up so you can see it from the top. I just feel like that tends to be the gloves that you know, if you look at, I guess the term is a duelist, sort of duelists would use. Vampires, you know, vampires, counts and countesses. Usually if they're, you know, they're almost always duelists with a rapier, and it's the type of gloves they have. They have these very sort of, what can we say, these very stylized gloves with the seam lines pretty much high up like this. Okay, so there you go. You can see there that we've got these kind of gloves kind of penciled in now, and of course you're going to carry that all the way across here. Okay, that is essentially, if we just do that a bit better, that is essentially where the glove would split. Okay, and we can carry it all the way back here because it does get hidden eventually by the other components that we've got going on. Oops. Right, same over here. You want to do the same thing, so bring it up to its logical kind of area and then bring it down. Check where that is. That's a bit too much. I think I will probably come at it from the, actually this one here, if we look at this reference here, I believe it also curls around to the thumb, because we mustn't forget about the thumb as well. So let's bring that back round to the thumb. Silly me, I've forgotten completely about the thumb. Okay. So you can see as we come down to the thumb, we're losing a bit of resolution there. Okay, that's a shame, but it's not a big deal. We can just subdivide it once again. And then now let's start with the thumb here. Okay, we've got that line there, so let's make the two lines meet. Possibly somewhere up there like that. Okay. Okay. Alright, and then here, same thing. Actually, I think the resolution on the thumb is okay. It was just the joint between the fingers and the thumb that was lacking detail. There we go. Okay. Right, fabulous. So what we could do now is, you can sort of see here, we could sort of do the same thing as it's been done here, essentially. Okay, you could sort of come around and cut that out if you like. I mean, that could work. Should we do that? Yes, possibly. I think that might be a good way to do things. Yeah, okay, why not? Gives it a bit more detail. So let's sort of pick an area somewhere around here. Maybe let's increase the size of the line. And let's just kind of pencil that in. Okay. And yeah, this is pretty much going to carry all the way over. And then we could... I would almost be tempted to just sort of wrap that up like so. I realize that actually it's the thumb kind of cuts out around here, but I mean, we could do that. Should we do that? Should we try and continue that line? See what it looks like? It might make it look quite stylish. Unintentionally. I mean, yeah, that's not bad actually. Yeah, just a bit of kind of style to it. Unorthodox style, you know? Just variety is the spice of life. Interesting trivia for you. Where did you first hear that kind of statement, variety is the spice of life? I bet you'll never guess where I first heard it. I don't know where you first heard it, but for me, I first heard that particular term, or like, what can we say, turn of phrase, I guess you could say, in Gears of War 2. Yes, and I believe it was right at the point in time where I was committing one heck of an atrocity of a finishing move, and it came up with the little Xbox achievement saying, hey, variety is the spice of life, 1 out of 200 or something. I thought, that's an interesting statement, considering what I've just done, and I think you guys have the imagination where you can guess what just happened in Gears of War there, but there you go. Okay. But yes, that's where I first heard that, in Gears of War 2 of all places. There you go. How about that? Okay. Right, cool. So what we've got here now is it kind of looks like a golfer's glove, although I might be a bit biased because I have been playing a bit of golf recently. But yeah, I think you can see that the top, I mean, apart from some parts here, and we do have to kind of create these tri-fold lines as well. I do like the look of them, but you can see it's actually pretty much done. Okay, the bottom, on the other hand, still looks like a hand. Okay, so we've got the top kind of where we want it to be, but the bottom could do with a bit of, well, TLC. Okay, so what I'll do is I've just sort of gone through the main idea of the glove there. I'll kind of put an end to this video here particularly, and then we'll kind of address the underside in the next one.